In this episode, I'm going to compare the various cameras and also applications that you can use for creating floor plans and virtual tours. We're going to be taking a look at iGUIDE, Matterport, Zillow Showcase, CubiCasa, also CloudPano. I'm also going to give you my recommendations based off of each, and also the type of work that you might be doing in real estate photography in the various markets that you might want to also penetrate and attract and get work from. Now, the first two that are the most popular, you're probably already familiar with iGUIDE and Matterport. They're the most popular because they're turnkey solutions. There's really nothing that you have to do, but there are some big differences just in those before we get on to some of these other options. But the biggest thing when we're talking about Matterport or we're talking about iGUIDE, it's the amount of accuracy, the high level of accuracy that you can get for your floor plans because they use LiDAR. We're going to take a closer look at that when we take a look, for instance, at the iGUIDE Planix R1 and how that LiDAR gets you extremely high accurate measurements. Now, because of that, you can then penetrate other markets. So if you're taking a look at something like CubiCasa, we'll talk about that here in a second, and what you can do with its floor plans, it can get you a general layout, and that's good. It's going to be somewhat cost effective, but you really can't get anything that accurate. So to really represent dimensions with a high level of accuracy, especially for other markets, that's when you have to take a look at using LiDAR, and that's where, for instance, iGUIDE or even Matterport come in. But the other markets here, they're very important to note. So this goes just beyond the standard real estate listing market just to try to show some layout or a virtual tour also. Just considering the floor plan alone and what the LiDAR buys you, that gets you into other markets. So for instance, commercial real estate, construction, the insurance market, and a real big one, it's architectural and design. To be able to go in with something like this, the Planix R1, for instance, by iGUIDE, and being able to do an accurate floor plan with very accurate measurements using its LiDAR, that's actually making you part of the construction team. So very common, for instance, with some of my clients, where I'll be doing progress shots. I'll do progress shots before construction begins, during construction, after construction also. Along with that, when we're talking about using these higher end cameras for doing the floor plans like iGUIDE and Matterport, then you're going to get CAD files. So you're going to be able to get files that can go into AutoCAD and other design software. And that's a real big one too. So you're not just delivering some JPEG to some client who's doing construction or commercial real estate. You're doing stuff that can be used by their team as well. So you can provide other deliverables. For instance, commercial real estate photography, a lot of times you go in there and you're shooting a place that could be a train wreck because it's going to be wiped out. It's going to start fresh with some new business in there. So to be able to have pictures to advertise the space and be able to do other editing to show potential of what it could be, you can also show an entire floor plan with high accuracy before any contractor ever enters the building. Now, when you take a look at doing something like CubiCasa for the floor plan, you can get fairly accurate, and also CubiCasa does have an option to download CAD data as well, but you're just not going to get the exact same level of accuracy. So it's really not meant, even though it's kind of an ironic thing that, yeah, you can get CAD data, but to really use that for professional redesign and doing construction work, it just wouldn't be reliable enough. So that's where these turnkey cameras come in of taking a look at Matterport or iGUIDE. But it goes beyond that also. We're going to compare image quality on all the various options and other things as well as far as price. But when we take a look, for instance, at just how some of this is constructed, for instance, when you're having a turnkey camera like the Planix R1 by iGUIDE, and that you've got, for instance, on this model, a Ricoh Theta X at the very top. Now, you might think to yourself, well, why don't I just get a Ricoh Theta X? The difference here is that this is fully integrated. This is part of the entire R1 camera. What that allows is for then the hardware here and the software that iGUIDE makes for this to be able to adjust automatically, things like brightness, dynamic range, color, all that, so that you don't have to in post-processing. Something that's very hard to do in other cameras, and for instance, when we get to Zillow Showcase, you can't do that at all. So that's part of it, but there's other things too. For instance, there's a removable rechargeable battery right in the side here. You just pop this thing out if your battery runs low, and that's it. You just have this removable battery. You have other ones on site with you. You could be shooting all day, all night, and not worry about then running out of battery power. And they're actually made to be in difficult, tough situations beyond just someone's house for doing real estate listing photography. So when you're at a construction site, you've got this nice shield, this nice shroud that goes over top of their camera and it snaps in place. So as you're moving things around, you've got this good protection for a little bit of moisture and dampness, but really so you don't bump it, you don't get a lot of dust on it. It also comes with a nice neoprene sleeve that it goes into, a nice carrying case. So that's different than when you're kind of up against maybe a little rubber fitting that could fit over top of your cameras on your dual lenses on a 360 camera like the Ricoh Theta Z1 or the Insta360 1-inch. So this is definitely more robust. It is meant if you need to go out on a construction site or in an empty commercial building, then they've got you covered, literally. So while we're talking about Matterport and also iGUIDE's Planix R1, before we get to these other options, let's first take a look at price, because this is going to be a big deciding factor if you want a turnkey solution to quickly do your floor plans and also do your virtual tours at the same time. So if we take a look at Matterport, to really do an apples and apples comparison to the R1, making sure that you have accurate LiDAR, well, you're going to be looking at the Matterport Pro 3 camera. And the Pro 3 comes in at a whopping $6,500 US, whereas the Planix R1 is only $2,500. Now, that's a big difference, and you still might be wondering, why am I paying $2,500? You can get a Z1 for about $1,000 and a little bit less, maybe about $700, $800 for one of the other 360 cameras like an Insta360. But once again, you're not just paying for the camera, you're paying for an entire turnkey solution with highly accurate LiDAR. That means that if you are going to go for turnkey in all the various markets that you could penetrate into, you get a quicker return of investment. So that's one reason why I'm leaning toward the Planix R1 and why I've decided to go with that compared to some of the other virtual tours that I've done in the past. More on that in just a second. But a bigger thing too to realize before we get into some of the other pricing structures, something very important here is if you're looking for a turnkey solution for floor plans and virtual tours, Matterport charges you extra for those 2D floor plans. That's not the case when you go with iGUIDE. Anything in iGUIDE, whether it's the Planix R1 or their other cameras, it doesn't matter. They provide you a 2D floor plan with every single one of their packages. We're going to see some other big price differences also. So that means if you're with Matterport and you do have to pay extra for it, already the pricing's high on top of that, and it does change some of the deliverables for your clients. And once again, there are some lower cost alternatives. You're going to have to do combinations of things. You're also going to have a little bit of a difference of time on site. But first, before getting to that, let's take a look at some of the image quality of using various cameras on different platforms. So let's take a look at the image quality first of iGUIDE, then we'll take a look at Matterport and others. If you've never seen an iGUIDE tour, what they do is they have a floor plan over here that you can minimize and just move out of the way, and then you can move this around. You can click on various hotspots as you'd like. You can also then move this out here, and you can select, for instance, maybe the second floor, and it has then the various hotspots that you can click on here also. So moving around here, everything looks pretty good. This happens to be my loft/gym with some of my artwork that I've created up here. And you can see that the image quality looks fairly good. This once again is straight out of camera using the Planix R1, which has that integrated Ricoh Theta X into it. No post-processing was required. It just automatically adjusts, the brightness, some of the dynamic range. It looks a little bit HDR-ish, but that's kind of to be expected when you're using these kind of cameras. If we move downstairs here, we can see similar issues here, but not all that bad. I mean, the image quality actually is looking pretty good. Going in here where we're really going to get a lot of glare, well, it's not bad. I can see that the outside is there. Definitely not a lot of noise though, and the image quality looks pretty good. Overall though, it's easy to navigate and there's just a lot fewer hot spots. When we take a look at Matterport though, that's going to be different. So here's a public Matterport tour, and good quality. This is using that Matterport Pro 3, but let's move into the front door, and you can see that just to get to the front door, you're clicking, you're clicking, you're clicking, you're clicking, because with Matterport, you have to have, sorry about that, oh, Matterport, bring me over here. You have to have a bazillion one hotspots because you have to keep clicking and clicking and clicking to get to where you're going. It can only take these little hot spots every few feet, and that's why there are so many of them. If we go in here though, we can see that the image quality looks pretty good. A little better dynamic range, possibly looking outside, but really the colors, the noise, it's probably just on par 1-to-1 when we're taking a look at the Planix R1. Just a little bit better possibly with some of the dynamic range looking out of the windows, but nothing excessive here. The one thing though with the Matterport is that it is difficult to navigate. A lot of people just get tired of clicking. I just want to go someplace. So you do have some floor plan options. And for instance, down here, I can click on the floor plan, but you can see this is more of really that dollhouse type view that all they've done here is really flatten this out. So I could go down here and I could try clicking get inside, let's say for instance, this bedroom here, and it didn't do anything. It just didn't take me there. Because it's different from using the iGUIDE, I have to go back here and actually go back to the tour itself to explore it. Now I can also take a look at the dollhouse view, which most of my clients have just found this just to be kind of unnecessary. It's a neat little trick that Matterport does, but I don't find any use for it at all. And you can see it's got all kinds of junk floating around here. So we can go right back to the tour though in here, and that lands us back in here facing a wall and then moving around. So overall, the image quality is good. Navigation though is really difficult, which is another thing when we talk about the time on site and what that cost impact is to you. Next up, let's take a look at CloudPano. I'm going to do this two ways. This would be one, even though it's hosted on CloudPano, this would be the same or very similar to what you'd see if you used, for instance, Matterport with the Z1, because this was just a turnkey Z1. I didn't do any editing at all, so straight out of camera, this is what I have. And you can see it's a little on the dull side coming out of the Z1. The dynamic range is okay, but it's just kind of dark overall. It really could use some extra editing, but if I were to use this, for instance, in Zillow Showcase, or if I use this just straight out of camera, once again going for the Matterport instead of using the Pro 3, well, this would be the similar results that I'd be getting, just not that high a quality. Now, there is another option if you were to use something besides Zillow Showcase and you had your Z1 or not Matterport, and that's using CloudPano, but you host your own tour using your own camera on a pano head. And that's what we have here. So this was done with that setup that I showed you, and that had a D610, an old Nikon D610 24 megapixel camera using a Samyang wide angle lens. And you would do this typical 4 around shot, maybe 1 up to so you can get your zenith and also your nadir down here. And those are things that I show, by the way, in my book on doing virtual tour photography. But that book was really intended for stuff like this because when you have turnkey stuff like with iGUIDE, you don't have to worry about this. But look at the quality. So if I were to step through here, you can see up the outside's good, and you'd expect that out of just about any camera. But when we step inside this multi-million-dollar home, we get an extremely high quality. So a lot different than if you were using any type of turnkey solution. And we can then, for instance, go out back here and just look at this quality. This is just incredible. But the amount of time it takes to put something like this together, it's usually just not worth it to get this kind of quality. There's a lot of work involved, and it once again isn't turnkey, and I don't have a floor plan. Next, what I'd like to do is take a look at the price structures of each project based off of your alternatives. So we've already seen what the price of these cameras can be, the quality of them, but what does it really boil down to when we're out shooting a property and we're going to do a tour or a floor plan for a property? That's where things also differ big time. For instance, let's say, just as a minimum, you were going to do 2 properties a month that required floor plans and virtual tours. If you're using Matterport, it requires a subscription, and you'd be using the Professional 25, allowing you 25 active tours at any one time. That's going to be $75 a month, plus you would need to pay $15 for a floor plan. And that comes in then to a total of about $30 for the floor plans and about $75 then for the tours. So you're taking a look at $105 a month from Matterport to have 2 properties that would have then virtual tours and a 2D floor plan. With iGUIDE, no subscription is required, and they do have a standard basic one called Instant, and each one of those projects is about $8. It comes with a 3D tour that's up to 75 scans, in other words, 75 rooms or areas, whatever, each time you scan in a property. It also comes with a 2D floor plan at no extra cost. So you're taking a look at no subscription fee with iGUIDE, and if you did 2 of those basic tours, that's just $16 a month for those 2 properties. That's a big difference compared to Matterport and its $105 a month cost. Also, there is no limit with iGUIDE on how many of those tours you can keep active at one time. But there's another option also from iGUIDE. That would get you the basic one. Let's say that you wanted to use the standard package. And doing that, let's say that we shot a 2,000 square foot home. Using their price calculator, you can see that there's a base price and then so much per square foot on top of that. It comes with a 2D floor plan, but that's going to be $44 for that virtual tour and floor plan, although it does come with more than just the Instant, their basic plan. Taking a look at that then would be $44 for each one of those scans, which would be $88 a month. Now that's still cheaper than Matterport, which is $105 a month, but once again with iGUIDE, you have more options to provide even the most basic package with a good 2D floor plan and a 360 virtual tour that's still of the same high quality using this integrated Theta X in their Planix R1 camera. Another thing to note that's a big difference between using Matterport and iGUIDE is that with iGUIDE, you own the data. So you can download your virtual tours and you can host them yourself. You can also archive them. You can archive everything that you've created with iGUIDE so you can use it later or just use it on file. Whatever it is, you don't have to worry about a hosting platform like Matterport being the only game in town for your virtual tours, where iGUIDE allows you a lot more flexibility. But there are other cost considerations also, and that's the amount of time that it's going to take on site. Now, some of these alternatives here will take you quite a while, and there's a cost, kind of a pro and con that goes with that. The turnkey solutions, though, when we're taking a look at iGUIDE and Matterport, and we'll cover those other ones here in just a second, as well as their time and cost, well, when you're using Matterport, as you saw during the demo of the quality, it's taking forever to walk through a property, not just for the client, but also you shooting it, because if you ever used Matterport, you know, every few steps you got to do another one, another scan, every few steps another scan, every few steps another scan. But when you're using iGUIDE, it's up to you where you want that, typical if you were creating your own virtual tours. So as long as you have a line of sight to where your last scan was, so that it knows, oh, that's where you would then step, and it'll put in then its automatic little arrow to jump to. That's all you have to do. So I had far fewer scans. Here's an example. Doing typically about a 2,500 square foot house, that's about the size of my house here. If you were to do that, it would take you with Matterport about an hour, but up to about 2 hours to get enough scans so that it can do everything that it needs to do for its floor plan and also the 3D virtual tour. That same house, my house, 2,500 square feet, when I used the Planix R1, it took me about 20 minutes to scan the entire property. But those are the turnkey solutions. Let's take a look at CubiCasa next. Now, CubiCasa, you may be familiar with, is very popular for doing 2D floor plans because all you have to do is just use a cell phone and scan a property real quick. Now, the cost is very low for doing something like that. You can actually get something free without any fixed furniture and pay about $15 then for fixed furniture, $15 US. Now, there are some limitations on getting fixed furniture if you're using iGUIDE. You do have to get into one of their premium packages. But you can, with CubiCasa, get a 2D floor plan with fixed furniture for $15, but your accuracy is just not going to be there. So you can use it for a basic layout to show potential home buyers this is kind of how the house is laid out. But you can't really rely on its measurements and have somebody come back and go, wait a minute, that was a foot off or a few inches off or whatever it is. You definitely can't use it for doing construction. That's almost unheard of because it's not going to have that level of accuracy that you do using the LiDAR, for instance, in the iGUIDE Planix R1. So you also then don't get a real virtual tour with CubiCasa. Now, they do have an option to do a tour, and it's a matter of just clickable hotspots in their floor plan that shows photos. So it's not really a 3D tour per se, it's just really a floor plan with hotspots that just shows some of the photos. So I wouldn't really consider that a tour, but there's also the other option here. Let's take a look at the other turnkey somewhat solution of using Zillow Showcase. Next up here is Zillow Showcase. This is one of the public Zillow listings, and you can see here, if you've never seen Zillow Showcase, well, it's just not very good quality. They only allow a few different types of 360 cameras that you can use inside their Zillow Showcase, and navigation is just something that is much to be desired. The quality just isn't there. Dynamic range is awful. It's really left up to whatever the camera can produce that somebody's using. And they also just don't have very good automatic navigation or spinning around. It's just kind of off. It just doesn't make a lot of sense in a lot of ways. So this is something where if you have to use it, you can. They do have these floor plans. For instance, you can select up here, for instance, let's just go to the floor plan. And then they have these different dots. If I click on a green dot, it's going to do something to bring up the photo. And you can see it also changed it to the photos section. I'm no longer in the floor plan. I can see where I am, and this is kind of nice, and yeah, I can see all the photos, but at this point, it's no longer a tour, it's no longer a floor plan. These are just the photos. So let's go back over here. So instead of clicking on that, I'll click on a blue dot. And clicking on a blue dot then moves me to that area, and then I'm in the 3D home version of this. But you can see the quality is just subpar. It's not really something that to me would appeal to a property buyer. And of course, this is just really out of the question if you're taking a look at doing anything higher end for architectural design or other businesses. Another thing to consider is also the price, because for this, you don't have to pay anything. This is entirely free to you, but your clients, the realtors, will have to pay about $300, $400, maybe even more. Some of the exclusive deals with using Showcase are about a $200 a month subscription to realtors, but that's only for one listing. So your clients would already be paying $200, $300, or $400 just for one Showcase listing, and it comes with this quality of tour. That's why I would then suggest to your clients that they pay you to do something better and just save themselves money from this Showcase listing subscription. So the last option that I want to talk about here before getting to my recommendations is thinking about using CloudPano or Kula. Basically, you're going to be self-hosting your own virtual tours, but you'd have to create floor plans also. Now, creating your own virtual tour is the old-fashioned way of doing it, but it gives you an extreme amount of flexibility. So we took a look when we were comparing some of the image quality. If I use this last one over here, which is a camera on a pano head, so this just happens to be a DSLR on a pano head, basically it's going to give you extremely high image quality compared to using any 360 camera that's using on dual twins. If you're having those dual lenses, it's just the nature of the beast, but it is extremely time consuming. So it's not for everything. Now, you can though, with CloudPano or Kula, you can use any of your 360 cameras. Once again, it's not going to create your floor plan automatically for you. It's not going to create the virtual tour automatically for you either. So you still have to go in, do some editing. You have to pop in your own hotspots. And that's why these turnkey solutions like using iGUIDE's Planix R1 or using Matterport have become more popular. There's just less time that you have to spend editing, setting up your tours, and also less time on site, depending on the method that you're going to be using. But another attractive thing to self-hosting it is the cost. So you can, for what is it, $33 a month on CloudPano, as a subscription, you have unlimited tours that you could put up there. So you could do extremely high quality virtual tours using, for instance, a DSLR or mirrorless camera on a pano head, And you're only paying $33 a month for that high accuracy, but you're the one who's going to have to do all the work. That's where it really differs on the various markets and possibilities where some of this could be used. So that leads us now to my recommendations. Based off everything we covered here, what would be the best camera, the best app, the best option for you based off the type of work that you would be doing? So for me, my preference is to use iGUIDE. That's my highest recommendation. And of course, their newer Planix R1 is a much better camera and all self-contained. But I do like it for a lot of other reasons, especially the high accuracy floor plans, and the cost is just much lower than what you're going to get if you had to go for the Matterport equivalent, which would be the Pro 3. So once again, as a complete turnkey solution, that would be iGUIDE. My next option would be, if you're not going to invest in something like this and all you're ever going to do are just some simple layout floor plans, then you could consider CubiCasa. Bear in mind though that CubiCasa won't be accurate enough to get you into other markets, whereas the iGUIDE Planix R1, that gets you into all kinds of stuff: commercial real estate, architectural design, construction, insurance, all kinds of other stuff. But if you're just looking for a quick 2D floor plans, you're not worried about accuracy, you don't have to have virtual tours, then CubiCasa is an option. Zillow Showcase is the other one. I don't really recommend this, but I do have it as an option that you need to have in your back pocket if a client approaches you and says that they want a Zillow Showcase listing. Now, this is likely to change. Zillow changes their mind all the time, so I don't really like to do Zillow Showcase. For one, the quality is really low. It doesn't guarantee also that the results in the search results of Zillow, it's going to float that to the top. Big misconception. I have a video on that and the really truth what's going on behind Zillow Showcase. I've got a link to that down in the description of this video. But that's just if a customer asks for it. And if they do, I would still try to sway them into using another alternative, because when you take a look at having, if you've invested in a Planix R1 by iGUIDE, you've got something that's way above what they can do in Zillow Showcase. And you can have your clients then save their monthly subscription cost and just pay you to do real tours. And it also is probably going to be a lot quicker as well. When we take a look then at self-hosting, like using CloudPano, well, that's an option if you're really thinking about high quality photos of your panos. And really that's a limited market nowadays. That's where you're talking about hotels, some businesses, but even then a lot of them will get by with just using some of these other cameras. So if you want to self-host, that's fine, but nowadays there's so many more turnkey options that have come out that really don't require you any longer to self-host, like on CloudPano or Kula. So bottom line, even though we've talked about all these various markets and all the various options that you have, it's good to be able to be versatile. So even if you're thinking about using just CubiCasa, I would recommend highly considering getting yourself an iGUIDE. Having one of those allows you then to penetrate other markets. And when you don't need it, well, you could just use CubiCasa instead of breaking out, like for instance, the Planix R1. But this would be my overall recommendation if you're doing real estate photography and you're getting any requests to do floor plans and virtual tours, and also if you'd like to be able to penetrate into other markets and to be able to broaden your services as well.